My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Go further with the American Express Business Gold Card. Earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels when you book through AmexTravel.com. Whether your destination is a business conference or a client meeting, your purchases will help you earn more points for future trips. Experience more on your travels with Amex Business Gold. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the King CJ Music Podcast, where we talk music, pop culture, and law and legal. Okay, so let's say this. I've been waiting a while to record this episode for a lot of different reasons. One reason in particular, one reason I'm trying to record this and one reason I was waiting to record this anyway, essentially, is because there was, of course, the Super Bowl that we had, where Kendrick Lamar performed the Super Bowl, and I think that was more controversial at the time. And people are still kind of talking about the Super Bowl performance. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about that kind of aspect. At that same time, though, there were a bunch of arguments coming out from either side about why we think that they should be doing this and why should we be doing this and why we should be doing that, right? Because essentially, while he is great at calling the culture out, a lot of people were trying to figure out why he was calling the culture out. So let me get into the aspect of this race when I talk about, most of my opinions on anything we talk about today is going to be strictly from a neutral standpoint. At that same time, though, let's be aware and let's be honest with ourselves that this may not be a easy conversation, and I'm going to try to be respectful for this conversation. At that same time, though, I do want to say my opinions are based on personal experiences. And for the sake of the argument I'm going to have today, people are going to say, well, what is your background and why are you saying this? I've read The New Jim Crow that focuses on racism. But it looks at the newer age of racism. I think it starts in 2019, right? I think that's where that book officially takes place, in the Book of Racism by Michelle Alexander. I read Race on Rap, where Baldwin and Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, and the activist sociologist James Baldwin are having a conversation about particularly about the identity, the power, and justice that comes in facing the issues that argue about America, but also the native son by James Baldwin. But I think this is essentially because he talks about his relationship with his father, right? And that's the angle that Kendrick kept coming with when he was responding to Drake, was his argument of, oh, you're not understanding the argument because, you'll never understand the argument because essentially you're not making a fair argument. And to some extent that may be true. But also, if we're exploring the topics of racism, Fire Next Time by James Baldwin is another book I would read. But that's my accreditation when I've read it. I'm currently reading Margaret Mead's Coming to Samoa, where she talks about the age of women and how the traditional culture changes for women in society. In Somalia. Anyway, that's all. So the halftime show for a lot of people was considered either boring, exciting, or very symbiotic. And when I say it had a lot of metaphors, symbols, and metaphors in this performance. I think we get the Samuel L. Jackson aspect of it, and I think you understand that it's how America has always seen rap. and it's an interesting perspective to take. It's not a perspective in which a lot of people are going to get, but also you have to be aware when you put that performance on. There's going to be um, a lot of talk around the situation because a lot of people aren't going to understand it, but also most times when people go to the halftime show, they're looking for something very particular, and that's not what was given. Though at the same time, though, I think I understand. I don't know. I think I understand, but I'm not entirely sure. Um, but essentially, that's what that argument came from. But there were three arguments I heard, right? And this first argument, there were three arguments. There were three main arguments that I was hearing during this time for this. The first argument was the halftime show was too complex for people to understand. There's a way to word this essentially and go, hey, though the problem with this argument though, and I've seen this, right? I've seen this argument, especially for this halftime show. This argument essentially is that, oh, you're not smart enough. You're not smart enough. You're see, the people use the words like stupid, and I think stupid has a complex meaning to it. But essentially, they were just like, "Hey, you're just not literate enough." That sounds like I'm calling you illiterate. Essentially, you don't know about the halftime performance because essentially, uh, you're just not aware of the culture. You're not aware of the history of hip hop and mainstream media. How it's always been forward and backwards. Um, which is a weird. It's weird to take. It's definitely a weird take to try to fix. Um, it's weird to fix, but it's also weird to kind of like. I get it. A lot of people won't understand it because it's not directly in their face and they're not having fun. I get that aspect of it. But to say that people don't understand it because it's too complex, I argue that it's not too complex. I argue that people are just, I don't know. I've heard people say, and I'll get into all these points, but I think essentially I believe the argument is that it's not too complex. It's just that people weren't just the track list leaked before the performance, and no one knew how it was gonna go together. And I mean, it went together fine, right? But I think I think a lot of people just want to have fun at the Super Bowl. That's essentially what people want to do. And for a lot of people, it's not that they didn't understand it. Some people didn't understand it. Let's be fair. Some people didn't understand it, and they watched it back later and said, "I finally understood like what each aspect of it meant." And a lot of people just want to have fun and party. But this leads to my next point. The next point is, at the same time, there's a second group of people that say that they just believe the halftime show was boring and they need to be more diverse, which I think this argument is based in political. I know the last one is and Kid Rock. I think Kid Rock's response might be, but it's weird. But essentially the argument is that I think essentially the argument is that people felt like they couldn't relate to the songs, so it was kind of boring. For example, Swimming Pool is diverse, Poetic Justice is diverse, but if we're talking about what's the theory? It's on How to Pimp a Butterfly. What is that? And I don't want to make it seem like I don't like Kendrick Lamar. Let me say that. It's not like I don't like Kendrick Lamar. I think How to Pimp a Butterfly is great. But it's like the Wesley theory, and then you hear George Clinton, kind of giving a speech, right? Like that. It's not like it's not like Acts 2, where Acts 2 is just in your face. Every word is everything, and it's Jay Electronica's thing of like the Black Messiah, right? It's not that where it's just directly word from word what it means. But if you can't relate to a certain aspect of the music because you think the halftime show should be more centered for everyone, I get that aspect of it. But hip hop this year has brought in a lot of people to look at hip hop, especially because of this Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, which it runs hand in hand. I think essentially you can have a halftime show where you want it to be different, but you also have to understand that if you make the halftime show different, a lot of people won't agree with it, or they just will not understand it, because sometimes halftime shows always been to like dance, perform. So it's a different take on that halftime show. And then it's this weird argument of like, as the halftime show was done differently. Coldplay, that did the headline for Beyonce and Bruno Mars's Coldplay was the host, but like people only remember Beyonce and Bruno Mars that were on the actual thing. A lot of people don't remember the like other aspects of it, which I can't argue. It's not a bad thing, but I think you essentially argue from an argument of, hey, Michael Jackson did his own show, right? I think both of these are. I think people fall into one of these three categories, which I think I can't say you're wrong, but I think the argument essentially is, though, what I'm seeing and what I think a lot of other people are seeing is belief bias or confirmation bias, right? Which essentially means people are shown through their algorithm on social media platforms what people agree with more. So you're tempted to see more of what you essentially are liking more, you're seeing more. So your opinion can be swayed based on the strength of other people's arguments. So if you, for some reason, believe or think that your answer is more possible because of what you're seeing on social media, then you are more likely to believe that your argument is more based on reality than somebody else's, or that your argument is stronger, which can lead to a lot of false beliefs or false negatives. Because let's be honest, humans overestimate a lot of the time. If you ask people in a jar how many they used to do it, but how many jelly beans do you think is in this container? A lot of people overguess. It's very rare that people underguess, but people kind of miss the mark. This other argument, though, is that it's based on Kaepernick's being able to do this, and then Jay-Z having the front. And I think that is an argument that can be made, but you are aware that puts you in a weird spot politically, but it also puts you in a weird place socioeconomically, right? Like, I think you can have two various opinions based on the aspect, but we're not a political show, so we're not putting that argument out here unless a guest decides to do it. Then we're not physically gonna put that out there without like somebody coming from the other side and talking about it. But let's talk about this defamation case. I've been waiting because essentially, Drake won. Drake didn't really win anything. Drake went to iHeartRadio, and he basically said, "Hey, I want to depose two people from iHeart and another CEO." And this is what people normally file at petitions in court to like depose people, right? Like to depose people to get information sometimes, but also to find or to use in their discovery, which a lot of people can do. That case has been currently privated, so we don't know essentially what happened, but that's essentially the argument. But let's talk about defamation, because I think a lot of people don't know what defamation is. People are like, well, I don't understand why he's suing for defamation, because it's never been done in hip hop history. Okay. Defamation, from my understanding, and my understanding of defamation, is that it stems from the First Amendment. It allows writers to create or produce work that's needed. However, it does not protect people from harm or accusing anybody of fake accusations to injure their reputation. And that essentially was from Tugman 2018. So like that's what I'm saying. That's like the like from Tugman 2018. It's a law book written for people to understand, but it's also in layman's terms, right? But it's essentially that's what it is. But there are two types of defamation, right? There's oral, which is slander, but also there's written. But see, the issue though, it's oral and written are two different standards, right? So oral is slander, and that's what we're going to focus on because I think in order to understand defamation, why he sued for defamation, no one sued for defamation before, right? And I think we've heard this before, but like Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, I think Prince probably had allegations against them, and a lot of them let it go. Like none of them sued for defamation, right? None of them sued. Aside from Cosby and R. Kelly, we won't talk about, but essentially, no one's ever sued for defamation in hip hop, or that's what people believe. The issue with that is though, you can sue. However, for defamation, it has to be defamatory to a person or an organization. It has to be untrue and it has to be published. Not like us, it's published, so I'm considering that to be published art. However, if it's true or not, we could say it defames a person, which would be Drake or UMG. The argument, if it's not true, would have to be proven in court, and I don't know if Drake wants to file a defamation. I don't know if he wants to, because once it becomes in the legal document, it becomes true in a statement. But like I said, I don't know why he might not sue for defamation. I don't know. Against UMG because UMG published it, which you might have to go after a publisher because they published it, which. So this would be my thing though. It's made published work. It claimed. I mean, they both made sticky claims, right? They both made sticky claims, but I mean, but this is the question: does it fall under like defamation, like oral defamation? I think it may. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not a lawyer, right? Because essentially, Robert Welch and what was it? Is it Getz? It's Gertz. It's GERT and Robert Welch's company. That set the standard, set defamation standard. But that's talking in 2018, right? It set the standard. It's a court case, but it set essentially the thing for defamation, which it's the framework for defamation. That's how we get defamation to be sued, is because we have this court case. But this court case that Gertz versus Robert Welch Incorporated essentially said that anybody, like entertainers that are in the news or people that are in the news constantly, can sue for defamation. And so I think he would fall under that because Drake is a public figure, but also because originally it was only for like embassy people, it was for presidents, it was for other people, and it wasn't for like entertainers, right? So it worked, right? Who are in the news regularly, and Drake falls under that, right? At the same time, I said this before we got to where we are today, before we got Kendrick and Cardi's album, before we got all of this. 249 isn't bad for an album, so it's one of Drake's lower numbers, but Drake has sold less first week numbers, and that's not bad for a Drake and P&D album. However, this album did sound more like Drake with P&D slapped on it. I don't know. And he canceled his tour. So, when I was researching the tour, I saw everything was pre-planned, and then essentially it got canceled from Australia. So I don't know. Most of these things will stand true, but I don't know. I think for Drake, you have to go get a tour. You have to go get a Bryson Tiller. You have to get somebody that can sing R&B, but also rap. And between Bryson Tiller, Tory Lanez, Leon Thomas, you got to get somebody that can do both. And you have to prove you can outbeat them at this point. I think you have to be able to prove. You kind of have to prove, right? Because I'm hearing a lot of people say the same thing. I like that Drake rap during the beef. I want more rap Drake. But a lot of people say, I just want the R&B Drake. But I'm like, these two things are inconsistent, because you can't say you want a full rap album from Drake because you like how Drake raps, and then you go, hey, he's strictly R&B. Because then, like, where do we go? And I think that's probably part of the issue right there, right? I think part of the issue is, where do we go? But essentially, I'm playing catch up. So, Big Meech's party got canceled, for a non-disclosure reason. It was supposed to be in the Bay Area, but it wasn't. It got canceled. No one told us why. It just got canceled. So that was interesting. Oh, Melly's ex-girlfriend got out because, or they want to protect her for a court case, which I get, but they said she has to testify, which I don't think is a bad idea. I think getting out, I'm a little iffy, because I'm like, getting out of a court case is what I see is best. Let's talk. I think essentially I want to talk about it, but I'm not entirely sure. Right? Let's talk about it, and I'll add to it. Essentially, officially, let's talk about this last topic, and I'm like I want to talk about it, but I want to be aware. This is a sensitive topic for rap people like myself. Officially, right? Tory Lanez dropped a sequel to Daystar, and essentially it's addressing a lot of people. You hear a lot of people like episodes in it. For example, you hear Joe Budden's voice, I believe. You hear a lot of inmates. You hear a lot of different people in these tracks, and you go, what is this? And essentially, it's him just kind of being honest. He kind of talks about it. Talks about the incidents in 2020 where he got charged with in the car with people, which isn't a bad thing, but it is kind of concerning. But technically, Tory Lanez was found guilty of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, carrying a loaded gun, unregistered firearm in the vehicle, and discharge of a firearm in a grossly mishandling way. And this is my perspective. Before the album, I was hyped for it. I figured he was going to throw a few shots at Party Next Door. I didn't necessarily hear any shots at Party Next Door, which I'm surprised about, right? Because that was interesting my shot, because I don't know what it is about Party Next Door, but I think he participates in drugs, and when he does, he is more vocal about a lot of different things, right? And so it was interesting. I was wondering if he was going to take a shot, because and he said he was only ripped to the fans, and apparently the fans don't think he did it, so I don't think he threw shots. But I thought he was, because he was talking about Tory's lawyer, so I thought he was going to take shots. He didn't. We got information about Chris Brown, essentially helping Tory Lanez for lawyer fees because he couldn't touch his money in Toronto, because I think they hold the money, right? I think they block it from being used in the commission of a crime, and I think Canada might have the same crime. He might have the same statute as the States. So this is the conversation, and this is strictly what I wanted to touch on. I was wondering if Bryson Tiller or Drake's or Party Next Door's theme was going to be used for this album. And I think he did it. I think Tory Lanez did what Canada normally does, and goes that Bryson Tiller route and just raps on that album. Straight rap. He does Killer Instinct 2. He does it, and he does it in a way which I think is important. Because he addresses current day issues, but he also addresses, I don't know if it's prison connections, or we talk about the issues that are happening currently in prison while people are in prison. There's a lot of aspects to it in which I'm like, this is great for the culture, but a lot of people are saying, and I don't get this, Because like, he's the only artist that's filmed an album from prison, which is not true. Lil Wayne did an album from jail while he was locked up, serving time. So while Tory Lanez is the newer generation that has done it and took Wayne's verse, he isn't the first. Lil Wayne is the first person to do it. So I think when we talk about it, the aspects of technology and our way to engineer and stuff, and the way that we've been able to do production for this long and found ways to adapt it for people that are want to be rappers in prison. I shouldn't say want to be rappers, that want to produce music in prison, is phenomenally interesting to me. Like the transition from not being able, you had to be in the booth, you had to be in a recording studio, you had to have labels backing because it was like expensive to hold radio sessions, until like, hey, I can make a beat on my computer. I can record everything, get a MIDI keyboard. I don't even need a MIDI keyboard as long as I have access to beats and all of this, and just drop music, right? It's interesting because I don't need a labels push. I can do it by myself. It won't get as many listens, but I can push it by myself. I can do promotion by myself. And I have friends that are independent artists, so it's always interesting, right? Because no label pushing and you're independent, or I believe that you're independent. Uh, it's so interesting to me because when you look at artists that have no backing, you see drop.
Take your plans out of the group chat and get long weekend ready in new Abercrombie. From day to night, pack new outfits for every part of your itinerary. Grabbing brunch? Throw on the A&F Mila dress. Then head to your dinner reservation in their new bubble hem mini dress. And yes, permission to overpack for pics with the girls. Abercrombie's best-selling Scarlet Squirt deserves a post in your feed. Your plans are worth it. Shop Abercrombie's new long weekend collection online or in store.
Like Russ, you see Michaela Bradboy, like she's great at what she does. She makes music and just has fun with it, right? But you see those people and they create music and it's a huge push. Like Little Sims, you see them when they do it, they big push. I think she has radio push, but in the States it's not radio push, so you kind of have to find it naturally, and that's huge, right? When you corner your own market, it is huge. Tory Lanez and also I believe Drake this year are both independent artists, and if that is the case, right, it is interesting because we've seen independent artists this year, especially we've seen Canada as a whole this year, from the Weeknd's album Something Tomorrow. We've seen from Tory Lanez album Peterson. We've seen from some Sexy Songs for You. We've seen so much in the music from Canada this year that I think we have a competition, right? I think this is a healthy competition between the two. I don't know. I like the way that we've had the Weeknd drop. We have Tory Lanez drop. We have Party Next Door. We had Drake. We had Drake and Party Next Door drop. I'm loving the way that this year's starting off, right? It's interesting. It's keeping everybody like on their toes, and it's something in which I've seen Cardi say he was gonna drop an album. He dropped an album. We finally got it. I got a few more listens before I actually make an episode about it. But like essentially, we're getting into music, and we're not slowing down. Like the gas pedal's on the floor. It's essentially what do we want to do. And so that's just something I really do enjoy, right? Like I truly do enjoy it because it's something that I've rarely ever seen somebody do. So it was interesting. Though with that being said, though, I really do hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I think Tory Lanez did what Drake was having an issue with, and that's producing music in which his American fan base would like. It's interesting, right? It's very interesting to watch this play out. Though with that being said, I really do hope you enjoyed this episode. There will be more episodes like this where it's long. We're going an hour. This new in 2025, we're going to see if we can make an hour episodes. by myself, because if I can, that's a bucket twist that's going. Though with that being said, though, I do hope you enjoyed the King CJ Music Podcast in video form or in audio format, wherever you listen to podcasts. This is available everywhere. Though with that being said, I really do wish. Hope you enjoyed. With that being said, we are out.